Welcome to this episode of Our College, Your Voices. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. The Ivy Online faculty leads and assistant faculty leads are frequently asked questions about academic freedom relating to statewide online course content. Although at times it may be difficult for leads to provide clear answers, they would like to give faculty accurate answers that will still honor academic freedom. Today's podcast is part of the larger Ivy Online goal to increase dialogue and provide guidance on academic freedom in statewide courses in hopes of eliminating any misconceptions that statewide course content and Ivy Online prohibit academic freedom. So let's meet our panel. First up is Melissa Speck. Hi, Melissa.
Hello.
Would you remind folks what you do here for the college, please?
I'm the faculty lead for business logistics and supply chain with Ivy Online.
Very good. And our other guest is Christine Peterson. Hi, Christine.
Hello. I am the faculty lead for health sciences for Ivy Online.
Excellent. Well, it's wonderful to have both of you here. And while I'm teaching for Ivy Online this semester, because I was also involved with our faculty as they wrote the academic freedom statement, I think our plan is that I'll jump in on some of these questions too and just add a little bit of context. And I think I get to start with the first one. Is that right, ladies?
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. So the first question that, as we were talking about this episode, they asked is to define and discuss academic freedom as it relates to Ivy Tech and Ivy Online. And I think the most exciting thing is that Ivy Tech does now have its own academic freedom statement, which is right now, and I think it'll still be there when this episode airs. You can easily find it. It's at the top of the page, ivytech.edu/policies. And it's the academic freedom statement that's at the top. And I want to really give a lot of kudos to the faculty who worked on developing that statement. They did an amazing amount of work. They researched statements from other institutions. They did a lot of conversation and debate about what was right for Ivy Tech. And then they took all of that and they crafted the statement that we have today. And so there's a section in the academic freedom statement around course instruction and content that was really designed with Ivy Online in mind, with that team of faculty when they worked on this. And I'm going to read it to you. It says, while multi-section courses may necessitate common syllabi, textbooks, and/or assessments, these should be decided on by a consensus of those teaching the course and not imposed by directive. Individual faculty members shall supplement or modify these as appropriate to achieve course objectives. They also have a right and responsibility to improve and innovate common course material. And from those conversations that were in the room, that section is specific to Ivy Online. So I think the way we do that is through curriculum committees. So I would love, Melissa and Christine, I know you spend some time with our curriculum committees. Could you spend some time talking about what is the role of the specific curriculum committee in determining or guiding academic freedom in a statewide online course?
So one of the main things that they work on is they work on textbook selection. They also work with our instructional design team and help them come up with our course mentors and when our course needs to be redesigned, a course developer. So they do have a lot of input and say in what goes into the courses, how the courses are structured and laid out, and how we worked with the people who are going to make those courses better.
Christine, that's a good point. I also think it's important for us to recognize that these are faculty members on the curriculum committee, as you mentioned, that are making these decisions. And if you are not a program chair and you are not part of this curriculum committee, you can always go to your campus program chair and provide those recommendations if you would like to see something different in those items.
Dr. Monroe, can I ask a question of you?
Absolutely.
We have been getting this a lot, and people want to know, can the curriculum committee tell me whether or not I can add any extra credit into a statewide online course?
You know, that's a tough one. So curriculum committees can do that. And I think most of them try to restrict it as they go through. And that's because extra credit can be really wiggly and dangerous. And I'm going from sort of institutional theory to my own personal theory. Extra credit, if we're not careful, extra credit can actually introduce a lack of equity into our courses, because extra credit might be requested by a really good student who's trying to, move their grade from maybe a B to an A. And they'll suggest, well, could I do this for extra credit? so that I could get that grade from a B to an A. And you'll think, oh, that sounds like a really great activity. And it probably is. The problem is it may not serve all students equally. And so that's why we really have to be careful with extra credit, and why we do give our curriculum committees the right to restrict some grading elements in a course.
So that kind of follows up with a later question that we have. A lot of faculty wanted to know, if their curriculum committee allows extra credit, what is the limit? And can we get some administrative guidelines on that? Because first of all, if you have a 200-point course, adding 50 points of extra credit seems excessive, but maybe having a 2-point extra credit assignment might not.
Yeah. I go back to the thing that extra credit is wiggly. Extra credit, when it is taking advantage of sort of a late breaking occurrence or something that you just didn't know about as you planned the course, I think that extra credit is appropriate. And you could use that in a couple of ways. Again, assuming that the curriculum committee allows it. And I think the first way I'm going to suggest, I think nearly all curriculum committees could do, which is to actually change the assignment later in a course to reflect this new opportunity that's become available. So as we think about this extra credit issue, could you all talk about the differences in extra credit versus customizing your course? And I'll give you an example, because Itza, who's my assistant faculty lead for my IVYT course, sent me my course audit last night, and I had actually adjusted an assignment. So I gave my students the option to do a more creative version than just a written version of assignment. So if they wanted to do collage or they wanted to do something else, they still had to meet all the same rubric requirements, but they could use other creative methods than just a written assignment. And Itza was like, hey, this is great. What's the difference in that kind of customization from the extra credit questions that you get?
I think that there's a difference between adding extra credits and adding or changing an assignment in the course. When you're adding extra credit to the course, you're changing the point value of the course, you're changing the grade distribution of the course. And it might be a better idea, rather than add extra credit, is to customize the course and change the assignment. So for example, Kara, the assignment that you were talking about, you added different options for those students to do in the course. So they had the option of doing one type of assignment or another. When I've been teaching courses, sometimes a new course will be released. And as an instructor, I find out that assignment is just really, they don't understand how to do the assignments. They're maybe turning in wrong work. So when I teach that course again, I'll go back in and customize that assignment to make sure that students understand what it is, or change the assignment completely. And we can do that as instructors as long as our curriculum committee has not told us that we can't.
Melissa, can I build on that example that you used? Because I've had this experience before. Not this class, but the last class I taught for Ivy Online, I had probably 60% of students fail one of the assignments. And I realized when 60% of students fail anything at one time, that's not the students. That's me or something in the course or something like that. So the next week, even though it sort of, it created a little bit of chaos, and I had to use a lot of grace in my grading, in my late work policy for a couple of weeks to allow them to get caught up. I actually retaught the objectives for that assignment in a completely different way, had to supplement with my own material in that situation. And then I actually reassigned that same assignment. There was nothing wrong with the assignment. Just in looking at it and looking at what they'd been taught and how they've been taught it, I realized why they were struggling with it so much. I think that's okay. I guess it would be good for me to know, do you all think that's okay? And do you coach other faculty that that's okay in those situations?
Yeah, I think that's actually what we should be doing as instructors, is making sure that material is working for our students inside the course. In addition to that, Kara, in changing that in your course, I would recommend that you also reach out to the course mentor and the faculty lead or the assistant faculty lead, so everyone who is teaching that course can benefit from what you've learned and your changes.
Absolutely. And I did do that in that situation. A very good suggestion. So I think a lot of instructors are concerned about making controversial statements in class, especially right now when we know that we live in a very polarized society in many of our health classes. I know, for instance, talking about the vaccine for COVID can be very polarizing, even in students who are going into healthcare fields. What are some of the things that you hear from instructors that they're struggling with, either in posting announcements, hosting their live sessions, any of those sorts of things with that kind of an idea?
A lot of our instructors are just very cautious and fearful that they're going to say or do something that's going to upset a student, even if it's unintentional. And the best advice we can give them is, stick to the facts. If it's not pertinent to your class, it's probably not something that should be discussed. So there might not be a reason to discuss the vaccine in a business course. And if you are discussing the vaccine in a healthcare setting, in a healthcare course, you need to stick to the facts on it. Here's what we know. Here's the information we've been given, and maybe keep our opinions as much as we can out of it, not to create upset. But the students also need to be aware that as going into healthcare fields, they may be working for a facility that's going to mandate the vaccine. And so that's something they need to think about before they get further into their education and maybe into their career.
Christine, I think that's a great point. One thing that I would like to add is that, especially in face-to-face classes, but now that we're doing live sessions and some of our other modalities, I think this is pertinent too, is when I started my class at the very beginning of the semester, I would ask students to let me know if I had said something that was offensive to them, and to also tell them that it was never my intention to be polarizing or offensive. And if I said something offensive, it wasn't intentional, and I wanted to know about it. As an instructor, that would help me grow. And I know that not every student who disliked what I said came up to me and told me, but I did have several students do that. And that helped me grow as an instructor and realize that maybe some of the things that I said were offensive to people who had different backgrounds than me.
Melissa, I think that's really good. And it's hard to do too, because it makes you really vulnerable to a group of students who, in a lot of ways, are looking to you to lead them. But vulnerability is a really critical leadership skill. So I think that's a wonderful thing to do too, and helps our students to open up to us. I love that. So I already talked about the change I made to an assignment. What are the types of things that you all as the faculty leads see that are changes folks do make in exams or assessments and assignments? And what can I do and what can't I do as you approach this?
So some of the things that we see are things like you talked about, Dr. Monroe, where you saw that assignment where you had 60% of your students failing it. And so you made the changes that you needed to. And that's what we want to see. We also like the creativity of instructors that come up with a supplemental assignment. Maybe you want to do a collage instead of a written assignment. Those are great. Now, when we get to exams, that can be a little more sticky. So can you change a written multiple choice exam to an essay exam? That kind of falls back on your curriculum committee. Also, is that assessment exam something that needs to be universal through each course? So I think of one of our healthcare courses, we have an assessment org. Every student that takes that course has to take that exam at the end. So that would be an exam that you couldn't change. And then someone had asked about, could I use Respondus or Lockdown Browser for exams or set time limits if they're not? And yes, that's okay. You can always make the exams a little more restrictive or rigorous. That is acceptable. We just want to make sure that we're following the objectives and we're making sure that students are successful at the end of the course, no matter what section they came from.
And Christine, am I right? Because in my IVYT course, I have a statewide assessment that's actually in the course. So sometimes those statewide assessments aren't in an org. They're actually in my course. So if they have that notation on them, I really shouldn't change anything in those. Don't change the title. Don't change any of the questions, any of that stuff.
Correct. If the statewide assessment is in there, that is also something that needs to be universal through each section.
Okay. But if I don't like it, like if I read it and I go, I don't really think this goes, I can email my mentor or my faculty lead, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
Those are the best people to get involved. Okay. Mentors want to hear the feedback, and your faculty lead wants to hear the feedback about the course.
Christine, I have a follow-up question for that. I have a few instructors who occasionally reach out to me and ask if they can open up a proctored exam to students. What would be your advice?
So, Melissa, you're saying that it's a proctored exam that they would go and either take through Respondus or on campus or virtual, and the instructor wants it to just be an open test. Okay. So I would have to say that that's probably not a good idea, because that would change the rigor of the test and the test security. That's another concern. So we want to make sure that a student in Section A and a student in Section B are getting the same learning experience.
Thank you. That's good advice.
I'd agree with that too.
Dr. Monroe, does the 5 ISBN list violate academic freedom in the classroom by limiting the instructor's choice of textbooks or course content? And can an instructor choose not to use any textbook, even if the course has one assigned?
This one is tough because my personal opinion and what the college's policy is at the moment are a little bit different here. So the 5 ISBN list does not explicitly violate academic freedom. You still have choice in textbooks. It's just a more limited choice than anything that is out there. And I think it's also challenging because as an individual instructor assigned to a statewide online course, we don't necessarily have choice in the individual textbooks we're using because the curriculum committee chooses those. So they're still chosen by a group of faculty. It's just not by me. And so academic freedom is both individual and corporate. It has elements that go to both. Now, to the question of, can I choose a different textbook or choose not to use the textbook, even if the course has a textbook? This is a little trickier because my personal opinion is I really want to say yes. The problem is we are in a situation where students pay for those resources. Now with Ivy Plus, this might change a little bit over time. And let me give everybody a great example. So as long as we have the Cengage Unlimited contract, where we have access to every book in Cengage's library of content, you could certainly add any Cengage content that's available in the unlimited library into your course. I wouldn't necessarily change the textbook that's there, but you are not adding any cost to the student or to the college's bill for textbooks by adding that material. I think it's also okay to supplement the content that's in your course with free content from the internet or free content from other sources. Maybe it's something you authored and you want to share it with your students. That's great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with supplementing with that kind of content. I do it in the form of small lectures that I put into every single section of my course or every single week of my course with my content. I'm not going away from the textbook, but I am adding more material to it. So it is a really tough question. What I want to discourage people from doing, especially in the Ivy Plus model, because this is not necessarily intuitive, is adding a whole bunch of textbooks because we think they're, and I'm using air quotes that nobody can see, we think they're free. Well, they're not free. The college is still paying the bill. And at some point, we may have to pass that bill along to students, and we don't want that bill to be any higher than it has to be. So where you can continue to consider cost as a factor in the materials that you choose, I think it's good to do that.
So what would be the recommendation for an instructor who has a very strong feeling about a textbook and thinks that it would be a good textbook to use, or it should be on that list? What should that instructor do?
So the best thing for them to do is to reach out to their campus's curriculum committee representative for that particular curriculum committee, because the curriculum committees select the 5 ISBN lists in the spring of each year. And so it would be best for them to reach out and have their curriculum committee representative follow the process to get that item considered and then potentially added to the list if enough of the curriculum committee members decide about it. Are the course administrative guidelines, like the things I got my audit from for ITSA, are those violations of academic freedom? And why or why not?
I look at it as two separate things. Ivy Tech and Ivy Online can tell you or oversee the administrative portion of your course, but you have control of the instruction portion of your course. So yes, we may say as Ivy Tech and Ivy Online that we're predominantly 8 weeks and that you have to do a live or an introductory announcement, a welcome announcement to your student, and that Ivy Online courses are going to be online. So that's just the administrative oversight of the instruction or of the course. We're not going to tell you, though, how to instruct the students, how to interact with the students, and how to give them feedback. That is your academic freedom portion.
And so if, let's say I'd gotten into my IVYT course this semester and I was like, no, I don't like anything that's here. And I just decided to replace the entire thing with my own course content. Am I allowed to do that?
The short answer is no, we can't do that. We need to make sure as an online entity and as offering a large number of sections that every student is getting a similar experience. And so there are things that you can modify within that statewide course content. There are things that you can add if you think they're relevant, but just completely taking the content out that has been chosen by the curriculum committee, created by the course developers, and being overseen by the course mentor and the instructional design committee, that needs to stay intact.
Christine, I think that's a great response. But they can change some of the assignments. So if there's an assignment there that isn't working for students, or I think that there's a better example out there, that instructor would be able to make those changes if the curriculum committee hasn't restricted that assignment. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Yes.
Yeah. I've found like I end up tweaking words and assignments just to sort of match my language because they're reading announcements from me every week. So I want the course to sound like it came from me. And I don't have to do a lot of editing, but I do have to take 10 minutes to read through every assignment, which we should be doing anyway, as instructors, and just sort of edit and reword. Sometimes I clean up formatting or something. So it just looks like my style too. And it's amazing the nuance that does create in a course and in an environment. All right. Well, this has been a good conversation. We might have wandered. So as you're listening to this and you hear we may have wandered a little bit, that's okay. These are nuanced. They're challenging topics. But Melissa, Christine, and I would love to continue this conversation. If you have questions or thoughts about academic freedom, whether it's in Ivy Online or regularly, please reach out to either any of us or your school's faculty lead if you're in Ivy Online specifically. We'd love to hear your questions, and we might do a reprise of this episode at a later time to talk more about this topic. Thanks again for joining this episode of Our College, Your Voices. I want to thank my guest today, Melissa Speck, Ivy Online Faculty Lead for Business, Logistics, and Supply Chain, and Christine Peterson, Ivy Online Faculty Lead for Health Sciences. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. You can connect with me on Twitter at KNM Tweets. Our producer is Sarah Ferguson. You can reach us by email at ourcollegeyourvoices@ivytech.edu. If you're an Ivy Tech faculty or staff member, you can join our Microsoft Teams listener community. It's another great place to post those questions you have about academic freedom. I send out instructions on how to join that community every Thursday. Our website, where you'll find links to our show notes, is ivytech.edu/podcast. Production assistance for this and every episode provided by Becky Campbell and the Ivy Tech Community College Creative Services team. Our podcast concept is by Matthew Pittman. Theme music and post-production services provided by Jen Eads at the Brassy Broadcasting Company. And we will talk to you next time on Our College, Your Voices.